it was legitimate to be mad as a fan back then because this guy he didn't even want to dunk anymore, and then he goes to the Nets and Jason Kidd is throwing him 3-4 lobs a game.
Like you said, I would definitely not retire Bosh, and I definitely wouldn't retire Kawhi, but Lowry's 100% for me.
DeRozan and Lowry made it fun to watch them, but that doesn't mean you get your jersey retired because you were a fun team to watch.
I said this was going to happen, and it's already come to fruition. Two historically injured players playing together. This is exactly what the fans should have expected.
Welcome to the Boomshaka podcast. In this episode, Vince, Emmanuel, Justin, and Abby discuss Vince Carter's jersey retirement and whose jersey the Raptors should retire next, Drake's beef with DeMar DeRozan, and our early surprises of the NBA season. You can listen to this on Spotify and YouTube Music, or watch us on YouTube. Now let's get into it.
All right, so on this week's episode, we got a few things to discuss, I guess starting with Air Canada, half man, half amazing. Vince Carter finally had his jersey retired in Toronto. It felt like it was a long time coming, both sides finally burying the hatchets. I guess, what did you guys think of the jersey retirement? Did he deserve? Because it's still a topic. Does Vince deserve to have his jersey retired in Toronto? What do you guys think?
I can't even believe that it's actually a question if Vince deserves to have his jersey retired. I mean, how many Canadians have now grown up playing basketball because of Vince? You have a generation of athletes that are playing basketball in Toronto, even worldwide, just because of Vince. He probably even rose Air Canada stock. You know what I mean? Your nickname is Air Canada. Vince did so much for basketball, not only in Toronto, but for all of Canada, because, obviously you had Vancouver coming at the same time as Toronto. Vancouver left pretty early. So Vince essentially was the face of basketball for all of Canada for quite some time. So to have a jersey retirement for Vince, it shouldn't even be a question. Even if Vince didn't even have the statistical numbers that you thought he should have had, the impact that he had for the game, which does matter, is second to none.
Yeah, I mean, it's a simple question. Of course, he should have it retired. I think, maybe for what he did, if you remove context and what he did for Canada, then I could say, okay, yeah, it was 6 seasons, 7 seasons. They didn't get to the finals. They didn't win anything. So maybe for any other player, you could be like, why are you retiring the jersey? But for what he did for the team, for Canada, especially when you think about what happened to Vancouver, if Vancouver had drafted a player like Vince Carter, maybe they're still a Vancouver team. So I think because of that, because of the impact he had on the Canadian players now, Canada is second most, I think, in the NBA in terms of international countries. I think all of that, definitely there's an influence there because of Vince. And how popular the Raptors became because of him. And even after he left, his legacy still carried the team through in terms of popularity. So yeah, no, for sure.
But obviously, definitely, I mean, we're all Toronto-centric. We're all Toronto Raptor fans. And Vince Carter was that guy that put us on the map, made us feel legitimate, made us feel proud as Raptor fans. That dunk off, wearing Toronto on his chest. We all felt good about that, right? So definitely Vince Carter. I think the only debate was whether he should be first or not. Whether he was going to get his jersey retired had to be done. That's not debatable. It is a hot button topic here. I think it's died down, obviously, definitely over the few years. People have come to terms with that this guy was definitely somebody that's deserving of it. But there are some people that still feel like, oh, he turned his back on the franchise and he's a traitor and he didn't play hard and he quit and stuff like that. So how do we reward somebody like that? So that's the other side. That's the other perspective of it. But for me, definitely Vince Carter, number 15 up in the rafters.
So that's what I was going to get to that, because I saw last night, for the most part, it seemed like just a huge love fest online in terms of Raptor fans acknowledging okay, it's about time that Vince and the organization were able to come together. You see the former teammates were there. It was just a good, feel-good story all around. But there were some people that, that I followed that were maybe you guys forgot, but I didn't forget. And then there's showing, clips of the interview that he had, I think it was in 2004 with John Thompson, where he admitted that he didn't always play hard. He didn't always play hard for the Raptors. And then when you look at that season, that last season, so Sam Mitchell made a comment before yesterday's game where he said, it was unfortunate that he didn't get to have the, peak Vince that, the reason why Vince was getting his jersey retired, Sam Mitchell didn't get to coach that version, which he said was unfortunate, but he always came, to work and was a professional, etc. But then, if you remember back that season, when Vince was traded, he was averaging like 15 points a game for the Raptors, right? And then when you look at in the same season, his numbers for the Nets, he was averaging like 26, 27 points a game. It was two totally different players. Two totally different players. Performance was like night and day. So I know he admitted to John Thompson, okay, yeah, I didn't always play hard, but it was obvious, right? Like even if he didn't admit it, it doesn't matter. Like you could just look at the numbers and you see how do you go from 15 to all of a sudden 26 in a game? Like, come on. And that was the same guy. So the reason why a lot of people were upset, I mean, it was legitimate to be mad as a fan back then because this guy, he didn't even want to dunk anymore. There was a point he's telling the media, I'm not just a dunker. I don't want to dunk anymore. And then he goes to the Nets and Jason Kidd is throwing him 3-4 lobs a game. So as a Raptor fan, you're going to feel disrespected, especially when you're already Canadian. You already feel like nobody wants to play here. We finally had our superstar, and then our superstar all of a sudden decided to quit. Says he doesn't want to dunk anymore, even though dunking is what made him famous. Then he goes to New Jersey, and now he's dunking all the time, right? So do people still have a right to feel upset? And I know it's been 20 years, but do people have a right to be upset still?
Yeah, I mean, you could definitely be upset about the way he left, but it still doesn't take away, from what he did. Peak Vince when he was averaging 27 points a game. When we had that big game on TNT, he was arguably one of the best players in the league. At that time, it was pretty much maybe him and Kobe. He was up there. So it doesn't take away from all the years of service that he did. We've had this before with the Raptors when people gave up. You remember when Antonio Davis gave up? He hung on the rim after a dunk and didn't get back on defense because he just all of a sudden he said, I don't want my kid to go to a Canadian school, despite being a first-time All-Star in Toronto. We made him an All-Star. But, when people want to leave, unfortunately, sometimes they give up. But once again, it doesn't take away what they did for the team. So you could be angry, but how many years is anger going to carry over? 2 decades? I mean, I could be angry, but I think 2 decades is enough. I could say, you know what, you can still get your jersey retired. I didn't like the way you left, and maybe, you know what, maybe Vince is older now. Maybe Vince regrets what he did. Tracy, I've heard Tracy years ago saying that he regrets, leaving Vince, right? You could always look back when you're younger, you make mistakes, and, you wouldn't, I guarantee the older Vince, he would never have left that way, but it did happen. I understand people are angry, but get over it.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's time to get over it. I do, like, Vincent, you're not wrong. And those things did happen. People do have a right to be upset. He clearly was not giving his full effort near the tail end here. There's a lot of stuff that's going on with the organization behind the scenes that wasn't all his fault that we weren't aware about. He went to management at the time and told them that he did not want to be traded anymore, right? But Rob Babcock still went ahead and made the deal. So, a lot of people don't know all that. So if it was just a case of, I don't want to be here, so I'm not trying and all this kind of stuff, then why did he say that he wanted to stay, right? So I think there's more to it than meets the eye. And I remember we're so new as a franchise and as a basketball town, like we didn't understand, man. We weren't big time yet, right? We were still small kids, right? In a metaphorical sense. Like we were complaining. I remember in the papers, people were complaining about stuff like his mom wanting her own parking spot, right? And we fast forward 2024, and the things that are allotted to superstars and their family members and stuff. And we were upset that his mom, the superstar of the franchise, mom wanted a parking spot. You know what I mean? Just minor things because we didn't understand the big time mentality, right? And for Vince to come in when you're a Raptor fan and you're not getting any attention from the U.S. market because you're in Canada and the U.S. players don't want to be here, and many of them refuse to show up. and then you are in a hockey town, hockey city, and then you have hockey fans and Leaf fans that don't want to give any credibility to basketball and felt like basketball and the Raptors were in direct competition with them for some reason. So as a fan base, you felt like, you needed to go underground with your support and all that. And then all of a sudden you got Vince Carter, who was the next biggest thing, and he chose to resign. Right? He chose to resign. He didn't leave like everybody else, like McGrady, like Stoudemire, like everybody else before that. He's like, I'm going to stay here, and he legitimized. So that made us feel really good. So I think once he decided to leave, there's a lot of hurt feelings in that went just beyond the fact that he wanted to leave. We as Canadians, Torontonians, we took that personal in a way that maybe a lot of other fan bases wouldn't have taken it because of our history of players, American-born players not wanting to be here. So that's why that hung on for 20 years, right? But when he came back in Memphis, and he got that standing ovation and he started to cry and get emotional, I mean, come on. At that point, you got to let it go. Because clearly you can see through him that it's emotional, that it affected him, that he wants the love from this city. So, and we want the love from him. Like, he legitimized us. He made the Raptors the Raptors. Yes, we've won a championship since then, which makes it easier to forgive him. But I can't think of the Toronto Raptors without thinking of Vince Carter. Like, I cannot. So this was great. And I think fans, like Justin said, it's time to move on. It's time to move on.
I agree. And I think to Justin's point, I think Vince does regret it. I think that's part of why Vince has been so emotional this entire time. Every time this topic has been brought up, every time he's been here and you've seen him, he's always starts to cry whenever he is discussing it or answering questions, because I think he knows within himself that he didn't handle things the way he should have, right? Yeah. So obviously there are things on both sides, but he knows within himself he didn't handle things the way he should have, and I feel like it was a huge relief for him for the hatchet to finally be buried and people to move on, and then his jersey to actually get retired, because there was a long time where people thought it wouldn't happen, right? And I'm sure he thought it wouldn't happen. So, yep. But since we're on the topic of jersey retirement, DeMar DeRozan was in town, another, all-time great Raptor. It sparks the topic of, who is the next Raptor, or who are the next few Raptors to get their jerseys retired. Throwing out some names: Kyle Lowry, Kawhi Leonard, DeMar DeRozan, Chris Bosh. You guys have any thoughts on that?
Those are all great names. As it stands right now, if you're asking me today, you would have to, go with DeRozan first. 9 seasons with the Raptors, leading all-time scorer in franchise history. On that basis alone, how do you not retire someone's jersey? Right? The numbers speak for themselves. He's the all-time leading scorer. He's the all-time leading scorer. I mean, yes, Lowry does have a championship, but let's face it, the championship was because of Kawhi. And how did we get Kawhi? We had to trade DeMar. So you don't get that championship without DeMar.
I mean, we're definitely not getting Kawhi for Kyle Lowry.
So now we're giving DeMar credit for getting us the championship because we traded him? Come on.
I mean,
in a roundabout
way, it kind of makes sense, right? Because DeRozan had to be good enough for us to be able to trade him for Kawhi. Like, we wouldn't have got Kawhi for Kyle Lowry.
No, you need the asset, and DeMar was an asset.
We give him a ring then. Why don't we give him a ring? He should have been in the parade with us.
Baby.
Come on, man. Come on. I mean, what do you think about this?
I don't think they should get the jerseys retired. I don't know. Like, yes, he's an all-time leading scorer, but okay, we couldn't get past LeBron. It was disappointment after disappointment. DeRozan is my favorite Raptor of all time, for sure. But in terms of, so we're gonna just everybody, how many jerseys are we gonna retire? At some point, there's got to be a bar where it's there's got to be something very, very, very special that they did that deserves, or else it's gonna be everyone. There's gonna be RJ. There's gonna be Grady. At some point, I think I feel like this is a small team mentality. We're still young. It's only been 30 years, and so we feel like we need to do this. But if you want to retire Lowry's, okay, he won the championship. He was here, but I don't know. Even Kawhi's, I wouldn't. 1 year? No, I'm not retiring Kawhi's jersey.
So
He
in
was
your
here for one
mind,
year.
Lowry and DeRozan did not do enough for the Toronto Raptors for us to retire their jersey.
I don't know. I don't know. I
You
think
just said
that they
that. I'm
had
not
good
saying you're
it was
wrong.
good
You just,
years. It was good years, but what did we really accomplish? It's not the same that did for the country and for the city. DeRozan and Lowry made it fun to watch them, but that doesn't like that's not doesn't mean you get your jersey retired because you were a fun team to watch.
that's an
So I
interesting
don't know.
perspective. That's an interesting perspective.
Yeah.
What do you think, Vince?
I so I have to disagree. I mean, come on. 30 years. So franchise has been around for 30 years. And we're only talking about, Vince, Lowry, DeRozan, possibly Kawhi, possibly Bosh. We're talking about 5 guys in 30 years. So it's not we're just retiring all these numbers willy-nilly. There's only 5 guys in the conversation after 3 decades. Right? And number one, Bosh, get him out of here. There's no way Bosh is getting his number retired. He come on. He made a couple all-star games, made a couple playoffs. They lost in the first round. He doesn't deserve to get his number retired. And Scotty Barnes is already wearing number 4 anyways. So by the time Barnes is done, we're probably going to, associate number 4 with Scotty and not Bosh. So Bosh is out. Kawhi, me personally, no. Right? 1 year, even though it was maybe the greatest 1 year that we've ever seen for a player being traded to a franchise, doing everything that you could possibly want to accomplish in that 1 year, but still, I would not retire his jersey. If you said you wanted to give him some sort of like Ring of Honor or maybe even a statue of the shot against Philly, maybe, but that's one of the most iconic shots in NBA history, right? So,
question, Vince, the statue. Who's going to make that statue? The same guy that made D Wade statue. That's
Well, one guy apparently made Kobe's statue too. He apparently made the Kobe statue, so I don't know.
Statue. Or maybe as a compromise, maybe they get the guy who made the Iverson statue and they make it.
Oh my God, he made it a small little Ant-Man kind of action figure.
Right? But I mean, to me, Lowry has to be retired. He won the championship, right? Lowry has to be retired for me before DeRozan. Even though I would say, DeRozan all-time franchise leading scorer. I like DeRozan better as a player over Lowry, but Lowry was here longer. Lowry won the championship, and Lowry was still a very good player for us when we won the championship.
Lowry was there 9 years, same as DeRozan. They're both there 9 years.
Okay, so you checkmated me on that. I thought that Lowry was actually here longer since DeRozan was traded. I didn't realize, but it makes sense since DeRozan got drafted here and Lowry, I guess, got traded here afterwards.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. But the fact that Lowry was either, depending on how you want to look at it, either their second or third best player when they won the championship in 2019, to me, I don't see how you don't retire. Most people are considering him like the greatest Raptor of all time. When you just look at longevity, totality of his career, totality of his time here. So to me, I don't see how number 7 for Lowry doesn't go up. DeRozan, I'm kind of on the fence. I probably would. All-time leading franchise scorer. I mean, I probably would retire his number just because him and Lowry ushered in. The reason I would say for them is that they are the ones who they were the face of the franchise, those 2 guys, when the franchise actually became, respected as a contender and relevant, right? When Vince was here, it was still baby years, right? Getting into the playoffs, that Philly series, it was still, everything was new for them. But then after Vince was gone, there was a lot of down years, even with Bosh. And then with Lowry and DeRozan, and Masai coming in, we finally got to a point where the Raptors became legitimate and known as a contender. They made it to the conference finals, right? Going up against facing LeBron in the playoffs. I mean, in 2016, if I'm remembering right, they went to game 6 or game 7 against Cleveland. Then after that, obviously they kept getting swept. But beforehand, I mean, they were doing their thing. So to me, just for respecting what they did as the faces of the franchise during that sort of decade run, I would retire Lowry and probably DeRozan as well.
Yeah, I would definitely, like you said, I would definitely not retire Bosch, like, and I definitely wouldn't retire Kawhi. But Lowry's 100% for me because he accomplished a lot as a Raptor in terms of the amount of All-Star games he made. And I think he might have made a couple of first teams. He became an Olympian here. The Raptors were constant playoff contenders every year, either first or second in the East, only losing to LeBron James. And I see Lowry and DeRozan kind of like the way I see Steph Curry and KD. I was talking to somebody one time and he's like, "Oh, Steph's better, Steph's better." I'm like, "Well, for my eyes, when I'm watching, Kevin Durant is the better player. When those two are on a court together and I'm watching this player versus that player, 6'3", whatever, can shoot from half court, 7 foot, can shoot from half court. Like Kevin Durant is a better player. Steph Curry's had a better career. So Lowry and DeRozan, same thing. DeRozan is the better player. When I'm watching them play, things he can do, the way he can score, the way he can get to his spot, he's the better player. But Lowry's had a better career as an NBA player, and he's had a better career as a Toronto Raptor. Lowry brought the intangibles to the championship team that DeRozan didn't bring. What DeRozan brought was easily replaced by Kawhi, right? Like Kawhi could replace a lot of people. He was fantastic, but DeRozan was a scorer, bucket getter, get to the line. Like Kawhi brought those things, but the grit, the leadership, the diving on the floor, the holding people accountable, taking charges, all that stuff is Lowry. Like he brought all that to the team, and what seals it for me was Game 6 against Golden State when we won the championship. That first quarter, Lowry came out and, correct me if I'm wrong, I think he scored like 18 points, either in the first quarter or the first half. Something ridiculous, hitting shot after shot after shot. And this is the biggest game in franchise history. And it was him, not Kawhi. Justin, if you go back, Kawhi did not have a good Game 6 at all, not for his standards. It was Lowry, it was Van Vliet, it was Siakam, not Danny Green. He tried to lose us that game at the end there. But everybody else stepped up to back up Kawhi. Kawhi wasn't great. So, and Lowry kind of led the charge. So to me, Lowry 100% should be retired. DeRozan, if you made me choose, I would say yes. Because it's hard to separate that era and separate the two of them, right? Lowry and DeRozan. It's hard to just, it's just Lowry. It's only became Lowry because DeRozan got traded and Kawhi came in. Otherwise, they were together. So, I would say for that reason, then yeah, I would say DeRozan.
Yeah, I don't see how you could do one without the other, to be honest.
Yeah.
Right? It was always Lowry and DeRozan. It was never just one of those guys. But obviously, so a bit of drama with that. Last night, obviously, Drake making more headlines saying if DeRozan's jersey is retired, he would pull it down himself.
So if you ever put a DeRozan banner up, I'll go up there and pull it down myself. That's the answer to your question. Is that what you're going to ask?
No.
Oh.
So on the last episode of this podcast, we briefly talked about the whole Drake situation, the Not Like Us diss, and how it, implicated LeBron. Now this time it's about DeRozan, and we clearly see that Drake is still upset. In my opinion, rightfully so, right? So, and he didn't hide his feelings, right? Talking during the game and basically making that comment. He called DeRozan a goof at one point. He's saying, if the jersey goes up there, I'll pull it down myself. And then he's, cursing at him after the game, which was, lip readers caught the video of it at the end. So, what are we thinking about this DeRozan and Drake beef? Does Drake have a right to be upset? Did DeRozan diss Toronto? Some people are saying he dissed Toronto by even being in that music video. Thoughts?
My thoughts are quick. I'm not even buying into this fake beef whatsoever. This is not the 90s. Everyone wants to be Biggie and Pac. This isn't beef. This is nothing. At the end of the day, Drake is an ambassador for the Raptors. he's really not gonna say, he's at the end of the day, if they were to retire his jersey, he's not gonna be mad. They're probably still friends. I guarantee he's buying him a steak dinner right now. It's not real. It's not real. He has to sound angry, obviously, but I mean, DeMar is from Compton. He's an LA guy. Of course, he's going to be in Kendrick's video. Of course, he's going to be, he's going to like the song. But I don't think I think there's two separate things. You can still be someone's friend. You can be two people's friends. He could be Drake's friend and he could be Kendrick's friend. This beef is all fake. That's my opinion. That's it.
Oh, Emmanuel.
That's a good perspective that I never thought of. I don't think it's fake, but now you got me thinking, because I did wonder, like, why he would say that. He knows, like, if he says something like that, all of a sudden he's creating news. He's bringing the attention to him, kind of taking a little bit of the shine away from Vince Carter's night, right? So, like, he knows he's on live air. Why would he say that? I think he's smart enough to know. So the question is, did he just get carried away? He had a couple of drinks and just spoke, with no filter? Or did he purposely and strategically, like Justin's implying, kind of put that out there to make it look like he's creating some type of beef or whatever? I'm not quite sure. But I think he's showing his cards too much if this is real, and he shouldn't have let it be known that this bothers him that much. Like, he has other friends, does he not? Right? Like, there's other friends other than DeRozan. And Justin said DeRozan's allowed to have more than one friend. And so if you're friends with Drake, you're not allowed to be friends with Kendrick, even if you've known Kendrick, let's say, your whole life. I don't know if that's a fair
but is that what he
position.
Said?
Huh?
Is that what he said? I don't think Drake is saying that. Like, if you could be Kendrick's friend, but there's a difference between being his friend and deciding to be in the video that calls him a pedo. There's a difference between being Kendrick's friend and deciding to be on stage at a concert singing and dancing along to the song that calls him a pedo. There's two different things, right? He's not saying you can't be his friend. If you want to be his friend, be his friend. But that song, knowing what that song is saying about him, that's a different thing, right? So to me, that's why I don't think it's fake, because how could who in their right mind would agree to be in a fake beef where you're going to call me that? That's how I'm going to be branded now. So now when everybody sings along to this song, certified lover boy, certified, right? Who would agree to that? To me, it doesn't make sense as a fake beef, because that crosses the line. Why would anybody agree that, okay, yeah, we're going to get into this back and forth. You're going to call me a pedo, and then we'll all laugh about it. What? It doesn't make sense.
Why did he say that on air? Like, why did he say that, knowing it's going to create attention and create drama? Why doesn't he want people to feel like he's over it? I'm good. Why does he want everybody to know he can't sleep at night still? That still bothers him. And he doesn't want to leave Canada now. Like, why? Okay. Like, why?
So in response to that, let me ask you, if you felt that somebody that was a good friend of yours now has betrayed you publicly, right? How long do you think it would take you to get over that?
Somebody me personally, I can hold a grudge for a long time.
You said you can or you can't?
I will. I would hold a grudge for people who know me. If you betray me, that's it.
That's it. You're done. Exactly, right? And this just happened a few months ago. So I don't understand. People are trying to say, "Oh, he's so bothered. He's still upset about what Kendrick did."
Here's my point. My point is, I get it. Like, you can have somebody betray you and you can be annoyed and bothered by it, but you don't have to let the whole world know. That's my point. He can look at DeRozan and be like, yeah, this goof in his head, and be thinking, I hope they never retire this guy's jersey. He doesn't have to let the whole world know that, especially knowing who he is. That's my point. Make it look like I'm good. I don't need these people. I'm good. He's making it look like he needs their friendship. Go ahead, Abby.
I think he did that on purpose because he wanted DeRozan to find out. Because I don't know if they're talking or whatever, but this is an opportunity. Say it on the air, because the chances are someone's going to mention it to DeRozan after, or DeRozan's going to see the clip because it'll be on Twitter or whatever. And so this was his way of sending a message to DeRozan without directly speaking to DeRozan, just to show him like, I don't like what you did, and I want you to know that I don't like what you did. I don't think it's fake. I don't think it's fake, but he probably thought that was the best way. But I also think he was drinking a bit because he was saying other stuff too on the air. And usually they keep him on longer. And I noticed they got rid of him after one of the commercial breaks. So I think that, there was a lot of emotions with Vince and everything. And then maybe this is the first time he's seeing DeRozan in person. Maybe he hasn't seen him since all of this went down. Maybe he was drinking. And so then, he spoke freely.
It was a perfect storm. So now, in response to Emmanuel, your comment about you don't need to let the world know that you're still. So in response to that, DeMar DeRozan got traded in 2018, almost 7 years ago. He's still doing interviews today, this year.
Crying. He's still crying
still talking about how he was traded. Still talking about how they would have won the championship if they kept him. That was almost 7 years ago, and he's still talking about it, right? To the world in interviews. So I don't think we can hold Drake to a different standard and say, well,
DeRozan's doing that to get pity. He's doing that to still get pity. People, poor DeRozan, I really love Toronto. It's so sad. They did me wrong, blah, blah, blah. Drake is not going to get pity by doing this. Who's giving him pity?
But are they trying to get pity, or are they just hurt? I think DeRozan was just legitimately hurt that he got traded. And I think Drake is legitimately hurt that somebody who he thought was his guy is associating with this song. So
sometimes when you're hurt and you put that you let it be known that you're hurt, you're looking for people to come back and help you and be like, okay, it's good. DeRozan puts that out there. I bet you his direct DMs get filled with, oh, we loved you, man. We really love you, DeRozan. You were so good. Makes you feel better about yourself, right? Drake putting that out there, he's looking for people to be like, yeah, we hate DeRozan too. So I just feel like it makes him look like get over it. Like, even if you're hurt, you're still bothered inside, which is a normal thing. I don't think publicly he should carry that persona. Like Abby said, I think he did say that so DeRozan would hear about it. Why? It's like you had a relationship with a girl, didn't go well, and you want to do stuff that gets back to her. So she knows you're still thinking about her. She knows you're still upset. It's like, I don't know. I like Drake. I just think calling out DeRozan and saying that on the Raptors air broadcast, a lot of people, like even us here, all mostly think DeRozan's probably going to get his jersey retired. You have no power or control over that. I don't know. I just think he should have just kept that quiet. That's just me. This is my opinion about it.
And Vince, you brought up an excellent point, which I completely didn't link. DeRozan is the same guy that said that he would have won a championship in Toronto if we never traded for Kawhi. So I'm thinking to myself, I didn't know DeRozan had a crack problem until he said that. And I was like, okay, this guy probably smokes crack, because I don't know how you think that we could have won the championship. So are we surprised that a crackhead is going to go in Kendrick's video against his best friend? No, he has a problem. So why are we surprised? Let's just, should be surprised.
I think
you went from saying his jersey is going to be retired to calling him a crackhead.
True. You flipped real quick on my man DeMar. Like DeRozan, has a very high himself. So who's gonna say, yeah, I definitely wouldn't have won with me? Of course he's gonna say that he would have been able to win. The person even asked him that question should even ask the question. Huh?
For 7 years?
7 years.
You're still going to talk about it for 7 years later? You're still going to talk about it?
No, Justin's saying that DeRozan believes that his Raptors still would have won if it was him instead of Kawhi. And my point is, of course he's going to say that. What's he going to say? No?
Yeah, but I'm saying, how long are you going to say that?
Yeah, DeRozan, in his mind, the only thing that stopped him from getting to the finals was LeBron. That's the way he sees it. He's always said that. He's always going to believe that. And coincidentally, the year Kawhi came was the year LeBron left and went to the West. So the Raptors never had to face LeBron for the first time in how many years? And they went to the finals and they were able to win. So in his mind, he's always going to believe that. 7 years, 70 years, he's going to believe that.
Yeah. So my whole thing is, it's like, okay, you can believe what you want to believe, right? Well, no matter how crazy it sounds, you can believe whatever you want to believe. But why are you still answering questions about it, right? Where it's about to be 2025, you're still answering questions about the Raptors winning back in 2019. Like, you want to talk about get over it? DeRozan is the one who needs to get over it. It's enough, right? Like,
Should he say no comment? Like he shouldn't talk about it? Like somebody's asking him. He's
yeah,
not asking himself.
just say I've moved on from that. I've already made peace with the fact that the Raptors traded me. I'm now on my third franchise since I've been traded. Like, what are we doing? He went to San Antonio, went to Chicago. He's in Sacramento now. He's still talking about 2019. It's
So
enough.
you want him? So you want him to lie? What if he hasn't made peace? The whole thing about
Wait.
DeRozan is he's so open about his mental
Mm-hmm.
health and everything. He came to Toronto to promote his book, and so if that still hurts him and he's still upset, and his whole thing is about being open and honest, if they're asking him how he feels, why should he be lying and saying he's moved on if he hasn't?
Well, just because I mean, I don't say it's necessarily lying about it, but just say why not say no comment? Why not say I don't want to discuss the Raptors trade anymore. I don't want to discuss 2019 and the Raptors winning a championship anymore, or how they would have done if they had me instead of Kawhi. I don't want to discuss that anymore. So he doesn't have to lie. Just don't talk about it. Like, why are you still talking about it? First of all, come on. Would they have won with him? The last time we saw him, they were getting swept. He was getting ejected. And he couldn't score. He couldn't defend. What are we doing? Like, yes, he's one of the greatest Raptors of all time. But Kawhi Leonard, he is not. He never has been. He never will be. Like, what do we? Okay, LeBron wasn't there.
Yeah,
So
LeBron is LeBron though. Why are you acting like LeBron is LeBron?
LeBron is LeBron. But who did we face in 2019? We faced Embiid and Jimmy Butler and Ben Simmons when he was still good, and Philly. Do you think the Raptors with DeRozan beats that Philly team? Because I don't. With Kawhi, it took that iconic shot to beat that team. You think with DeRozan we're beating that team? Come on. You think with DeRozan we're beating Milwaukee in the next round with Giannis at the peak of his powers? You think we're beating that team? Come on. So DeRozan conveniently wants to focus on LeBron, and I understand why. For his narrative, it makes sense to focus. Well, LeBron was our kryptonite, and LeBron was gone now. Which, by the way, is such a loser mentality to have. Like, oh, the only guy we couldn't beat was LeBron, and now LeBron's gone, so therefore keep me because now we can win because the guy that we were scared of is gone. He's the same guy when they were playing in the series against Cleveland, and he's saying, "Oh, well, if we had LeBron, we'd be winning too." Come on, man. Seriously?
I think he wanted it. I think he wanted a chance. I think he just wanted the chance. I think if Masai had given it 1 year with LeBron gone and the Raptors still couldn't do anything with DeRozan, I don't think he'd be talking as much as he's talking now. But because he didn't even get a chance to see what that team could look like without LeBron in the East,
Yeah,
I
9
think
years.
I think it's gonna eat it. I think like Emmanuel's point, I think it's gonna eat at him because he just personally, for his own personal goals, he would have wanted to see what he could do with the Raptors without LeBron. I think that's fair for him to think that and to
I don't
wonder that.
understand this whole the narrative that the only person they couldn't beat was LeBron is not even true. They got swept by Bradley Beal and John Wall in 2015. What are we talking about? They got swept in the first round by Washington
When they were
Wizards.
just starting out. To be fair,
That
that's
was
when
like
they were
3
just
years
starting.
before.
Come
Why
on.
are you bringing
Yeah.
up something that happened 3 years before?
They were just starting at that time.
That's the only team they couldn't beat. It's not. Come on. It's not. Anyways, you see where I stand on this. DeRozan, he's a great Raptor. Should we retire his jersey? I would say yes, but there was no way we were going to win a championship with him. There was no way that you don't make that trade for Kawhi Leonard in exchange for DeMar DeRozan to say, okay, let's give him a chance now that LeBron is gone. It just doesn't make sense.
I would definitely retire his jersey as well. But I think for DeRozan, it's important for him to be connected to Toronto because he doesn't want to, he doesn't have a home, right? And to him, Toronto's his home. He drafted here. His best years were here. So San Antonio, Chicago, these places are just like pass-throughs, right? So it's important for him to have that love from Toronto. And I think that's why he keeps saying this kind of stuff so he can still be connected to Toronto in some way and let the Toronto fans know that he hasn't forgotten about us and stuff like that. And I think to bring it together, Drake saying that was Drake basically trying to say, no, I'm cutting you from Toronto. Like, this is my Toronto. You diss me, so therefore I'm kind of cutting you from all of Toronto. That's the kind of the sense that I got from Drake, anyways.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I would agree with that, in terms of what Drake was trying to accomplish with that. And, it's still fresh for Drake. So probably, I think one of you said it, probably, I don't know if it was Justin, but one of you said maybe a few years from now, it won't even be a concern anymore. But it's still fresh. So obviously that's why he's still mad. Anyways, we spent a long time on that. Let's talk about the NBA generally. In terms of, we're now a couple weeks in to the season. Do you guys have any standouts in terms of early surprises, teams or players who have surprised you with their performance, either good or bad? Just throwing out some names. There's Milwaukee has not started the season well at all. They've been without Middleton, but they've had Giannis, they've had Lillard, so there's no excuse for them to be 1-5 right now. Philly is at the bottom of the conference, but they've been without Embiid and PG, so maybe that one makes sense. Meanwhile, you got Cleveland is undefeated right now, 7-0. I don't think a lot of people saw that coming. Boston is still great on the West. OKC is doing, they're undefeated right now. Golden State, I feel like, maybe has started better than people expected. They only have one loss, and Denver is struggling a little bit. Like, do you guys have any teams or players who you felt like have stood out positively or negatively so far?
Yeah, so for teams, I would say Golden State's pretty much a shock to me, especially with Steph being out, losing Clay. I didn't expect all their young guys to step up and produce wins for them. So they're still and Wiggins. Don't forget, Wiggins was out for a bit too. So that was definitely been a shock so far. For players, I think we're probably all going to agree, being Toronto natives, Grady Dick. I mean, he sees the opportunity. We have a lot of injuries, and he had the opportunity, and he's been beyond anyone's expectations at this point. I think the sky's the limit for him, and the good thing about him being injured, we still haven't seen the trio together with Quickly, with Barrett and Scotty. We still haven't seen them together yet. So the fact that Grady is playing so good, it does give you hope for the future, because when you do get all three of those guys back and you have Grady, now you have four guys that can really score. So, and we're doing so poorly, you can get a nice high draft pick. The future does look bright. So that's my early take so far.
If I focus on the Raptors, I would say it's an early surprise for me, even though their record is probably what people would expect. Not so much the record, but the actual performance on the court, I've been impressed by. Like, even Scotty, I think he had a rough first game versus the Cavs, and people wanted to again bring up the comparison with Mobley. But ever since after that game, he was doing well, of course, until he hurt his eye. And I think, to Justin's point, Grady has been really impressive for his sophomore year. I think his aggressiveness is what I'm most impressed with, because everyone knew Grady when he got drafted for his shooting. That was supposed to be the thing, like he's going to stretch the floor. But for what we've seen this year, like, yes, his shooting, but also his driving too. He's very aggressive when he drives. He doesn't shy away from contact. So I've been very impressed with Grady. And obviously RJ Barrett has been incredible. I think he's the best player on the Raptors, which I know some people may or may not agree with that because of Scotty. But just his first 3 games, he was out for a while because he hurt himself in preseason. He's out at 31 points, 33 points, and then another 33 or 31. Like, he's incredible. Again, his aggressiveness. He can shoot. I think there is questions about that. He can shoot if you need threes, but he can also drive and dunk. So yeah, I'm excited to see what the Raptors will do when they're all healthy. So we haven't even got to see with Quickly yet. So yeah, I'm excited. 2-5 record, but there's been close games that they could have won if not for the injuries. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Definitely. And real quick with the Raptors too, is like, know what I want from them. Like I watched them play, and obviously, like you're cheering for all the things that Abby just mentioned. You know, the progression of Grady Dick, RJ playing well, Pirtle like double doubles all the time. Mobile, I like him too. Like I think he's got a future to him. And but it's like, what are we doing? Like, do we want to win? Do we not want to win? Like, I'd rather get into a draft pick situation, get a top 6, 7 pick this year because it's supposed to be a very deep draft, and we have enough good pieces now that I think one more top tier talent player would put us to the level we want to be, where we're having success for years to come, not just like once in and out, in and out. So that's why I feel like, I don't know, I'm conflicted with the Raptors, but definitely Grady Dick has been amazing. I've said this a while back, like Grady Dick to me is like Klay Thompson. He just happens to be white, right? And we usually don't compare white players to black players and black players to white players, but maybe not the defense part, because Klay Thompson in his early days was known for his defense as much as he was for his shooting. But the way he moves, the way he can just catch and shoot, right? He has a little pull out. Like Klay Thompson wasn't just a stand in the corner shooter. And that's what I see with Grady Dick. When you draft him, you thought he's just going to be a stand in the corner shooter. But he comes off screen, he cuts back door, floaters, and and this is the biggest compared to Klay Thompson. He's like 6'7", right? He's not like a shooter that's like 6'3", 6'2". He's a 6'7" big shooter. So I'm very excited about him and what his potential could lead. But in terms of off the Raptors surprises, Cleveland Cavaliers obviously being undefeated. I'm a little surprised about that, right? They had a lot of injuries last year, but the talent is there. Garland is good. Mitchell's having a good year. Mobley's come back a little bit better. They still got Allen. So Cleveland definitely is a surprise. Milwaukee, man, I don't know, like Doc Rivers, I don't know what's going on with Milwaukee. Like, again, this is happening with Milwaukee. You know, I wonder if you could go back and tell Giannis, if you're going to bring in Doc Rivers and this is what was going to happen, if he would have just said, okay, no, keep Adrian Griffin. Because reportedly he was one of the ones that wasn't happy with Adrian Griffin. But if he had known that this is what it was going to be like with Doc Rivers, I'm sure he would have said, no, give me Adrian Griffin. Like, this is terrible. This is terrible with Doc Rivers. And there's so much talk and stuff about Doc Rivers over the years, about him not being a good coach, him making excuses. And it's playing out right in front of our face. Like, again, with Milwaukee, it's so bad. I know they lost a close one the other night, buzzer beater Donovan Mitchell, but the score is so 130 something to 130 something. I don't know what exactly it was. Like, something's wrong there. So Milwaukee is definitely a big disappointment, and I don't know what's going to happen moving forward. Like, will Doc Rivers last till the end of the season? Will they be willing to pay him? Still paying, I think, Budenholzer. I think still paying Adrian Griffin. Or are they now stuck with Doc Rivers? And if that's the case, and they flame out, what happens with Giannis? Like, there's just so many like unknowns there that we don't know about Milwaukee. And then the last one is Philly. Yeah, like they're missing players, so you can kind of understand why they're losing games. But it's like, if you had asked me, will they be missed 2 weeks into the season? Will Embiid have played 0 games and Paul George 0 games? I would say no. I would say yeah. Like, why would you think that? Embiid was playing in the Olympics. Why was he in the Olympics if he can't even start the season with his team that's paying him his contract? So I am surprised that Embiid hasn't played at all. I'm surprised that Paul George hasn't played at all, especially after the season he came off of last year. And I'm surprised that Maxey can't get them too many wins. I mean, he's playing well. He's doing his thing. He's not shooting a good percentage. He's taking a lot of shots, right? Because it's all on him now. And I'm surprised. If I'm Philadelphia fans, I will be surprised and I will be concerned with what's going on over there, because I don't think that he's just going to come back and be like, okay, I'm never going to miss a game again the rest of the season. No. That's not going to happen. I'm telling you, if he's missing 2 weeks right to start, like, this is going to be a problem all year. So I don't know what's going to happen in Philadelphia. Now he's like shoving journalists and stuff who are talking. Again, if they're making comments about his brother's deceased brother and stuff like that, then I don't know. But it just sounds like a lot of frustration going on in Philadelphia right now.
So,
But Emmanuel, are you really surprised? I mean, this will be a good time to clip what I said in the previous podcast. And on paper, if Philly is healthy, then absolutely they could contend. They can go to the finals. But you proved to me that those two guys can be healthy the full season, and I'm just not buying it. I said this was going to happen, and it's already come to fruition. Two historically injured players playing together. This is exactly what the fans should have expected. I'm not a fortune teller. I just look at the history, and I mean, on paper, once again, a great team, but their record is indicative of the roster that they do have. I mean, without those two, superstars being available, you don't have a lot to work with, really, if you look at their roster. So I'm not surprised. I mean, the starting lineups, Drummond and Caleb Martin and Kyle Lowry's playing about 18 to 20 minutes a game, and he's pretty washed up, and it's not a team that you would expect to be over 500 without
he's catching strays.
I'm sorry, it's just but I do like what you said about Doc. Going back to that, I just don't understand it, because the one thing I've noticed is I've heard a lot of former players talk about Doc, and they've never said one positive thing. And that means a lot to me. Like when I hear Gilbert and Jeff Teague and everyone else talk about Doc, they wonder why he has a job. And I'm just like, I have never heard a guy come out and defend Doc Rivers. So what is he doing? Yeah. So what is he doing as a coach to have every player say, you know what, you are not a good coach? And why does he keep getting these jobs? I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean, last season we saw JJ Redick he held no punches. He said Doc never takes accountability. He said it point blank. He said Doc Rivers doesn't take accountability, and he's always passing the buck, passing the blame. And I mean, at this point, Doc Rivers. So I think the only player I've seen probably defend Doc maybe is KG and Paul Pierce. I think those guys defended him because they wanted, obviously they won a championship with him in 08. But I mean, 2008 was a long time ago, right? And I feel like Doc Rivers has been living off of that 2008 cachet way too long, right?
Yeah.
Like when Doc Rivers started as a coach, I remember when he was in Orlando, he did a good job with an Orlando team that didn't really have a lot of talent. And then and I think he won Coach of the Year, if memory serves. And this was before they were able to add Tracy McGrady and Grant Hill. Then he goes to Boston, he wins a championship, so things are looking up for him. But ever since then, it hasn't gone well for him at all. And he's gotten multiple series where he's been up 3-1 and ends up losing the series. Then he goes to Milwaukee. Milwaukee was 33-15, if I remember correctly. 33-15 under Adrian Griffin. And for whatever reason, they decided to get rid of Griffin and replace him with Doc Rivers. And then they go 500 for the rest of the year, and now they're like 1-5. So obviously at this point, it's looking like it was a horrible decision to get rid of Adrian Griffin and replace him with Doc Rivers. And then to compound it, now you have his assistant is Darvin Ham. Like Darvin Ham was terrible with the Lakers, and now he is the top assistant with Doc Rivers. So if they do get rid of Doc Rivers, Darvin Ham's going to take over. Like there's no hope on the horizon in Milwaukee. If you're a Bucks fan, I feel sorry for you, because you thought when you got Lillard that, okay, we won our championship in 2021. Now we got Lillard. Okay, we're going back to the finals. And it's like, not so fast. Maybe if they kept Griffin, ironically, right? Maybe if they kept Griffin, because they were looking good with him. But you replace him with Doc, I think at this point, it's like, the jig is up on Doc Rivers. I don't think he can continue to fool people much longer.
Yeah, and he's fooled everyone from the beginning, because even when he got that coach there, you remember that Orlando team, everyone was in a contract year. You had Ben Wallace, Daryl Armstrong, Matt Harpering, Pat Garrity, all those guys. They were all on contract years. So of course they were going to play and exceed expectations because they want to get paid and make a name for themselves. Doc got too much credit for that. And Boston, come on, one of the original super teams. How much credit are you really going to give him for that one? So, I mean, they essentially coached themselves. I've heard many times Rondo, even though he was young, he was pretty much like a coach on the floor. You had, older heads like KG. Those guys already knew what to do. They knew how to win. They pretty much coached themselves. So Doc just gets way too much credit. It's what it is to me. It's like, can you give Lenny Wilkens credit for being the winningest coach in NBA history? Can you? When he's also the most losingest coach in NBA history? That's how I feel with Doc. I mean, you can't. Sometimes you just have to look at the totality of the situation and realize things aren't what they seem.
I think coaching matters when you have top level players like you do, because you got to make little changes to make a difference. Like we saw it with Darvin Ham. And even when they had Budenholzer, right? They had Budenholzer. He won them a championship. Budenholzer for many years in Atlanta was always a top coach. Milwaukee got him and they were always good. Yes, we beat them that year in the playoffs, but then they came back and they ultimately got the championship done. He got fired even though they had a good record for reasons that I till now it's not fully clear. Maybe they wanted to go further. They thought they disappointed. But I mean, he lost his brother during the playoffs in a car accident. And, there's a lot of different things that were going on, and they got rid of him. This guy comes back, and I bring him up because Phoenix is now second in the West, right? And they're like 5-1. This same Phoenix team that we saw last year, that we're watching, and we're like, what are they doing out there? They're like, why is Devin Booker playing point guard? Why is Kevin Durant just standing in the corner waving his hands? Like, it didn't make any sense. What happened? They make a coaching change. They bring in somebody with a little bit more experience who's proven to get it done, and now they've been turned around. So I think that coaching does matter when it comes to the top level talented players. You have teams with talent. And I think Doc, for whatever reason, it looks like he's out to lunch. Like, it looks like he's just there and he doesn't know what actions to put them in for them to be the best versions of themselves working together. Like, I don't see them playing together enough. I see either Giannis has it attacking or Dame has it attacking. I don't see them working together in a way that a guard and a big should work together, right? And I think that's the combination that he needs to figure out. But yeah, I think the league might have passed Doc Rivers by. And if he loses this job, I don't think he's going to get another job coaching. But I said that last time, and I was wrong. So who knows?
Yeah, I think at this point, the only person defending him is his son. I think Austin Rivers is the only one he's gotten it in his corner at this point. I don't think anybody else is defending him. But and then if you're Lillard, how do you feel if you're Lillard? Because Lillard never wanted to go to Milwaukee in the first place, right? Yeah. Lillard was clear he wanted to go to Miami. And for whatever reason, the GM in Portland was like, well, I'm not sending you to Miami. So he sent him to Milwaukee. But then it seemed at the time like, okay, you didn't want to go to Milwaukee, but it kind of felt to me like the Kawhi trade a little bit in terms of Kawhi was clear in where he wanted to go. He wanted to go to LA. And then they send him to the total opposite of LA by sending him to Toronto, right? But it worked out and he wins this championship. So I thought, okay, with Lillard, even though he didn't want to go to Milwaukee, it's a perfect situation for him. You're paired up with Giannis. You have Middleton. Yes, he's in and out of the lineup, but still, if Middleton's your third guy, you can rely on him less. You still have Lopez, etc. And it just hasn't worked. And I'm wondering if you're Lillard now, are you regretting sort of how you ended your legacy and your time in Portland? He was one of those guys. He was one of those guys that was known as, synonymous with that team, synonymous with their franchise. And then he just decided all of a sudden he was all about, understanding the grind, don't run from the grind. And all of a sudden he decided he was going to run from the grind and he wanted to get traded to South Beach. And then he ends up in Milwaukee and now, they're terrible. So I don't know. I can't help but just wonder like what's going through Lillard's mind right now. If he's thinking maybe he should just stayed in Portland after all.
I don't think Lillard could, regret it because he stuck around for a long time. Portland was at a standstill. It was obvious that this was a team that wasn't really going to go anywhere. He had a lot of younger guys around him, so it was going to take years to develop. You had Anthony Simons there as a really young player. It just wasn't a team that was going to actually develop quick enough for a player his age. So I can completely understand why he would finally say, okay, trade me. How many years did he spend in Portland? I mean, his entire career, it was, you can look that up, but I mean,
maybe 10?
Yeah, maybe about 10 decades. So he's done more than enough. There just comes a point sometimes where, you're at a standstill. But when you do ask for a trade, you never know where you can go, right? And as you said, if you do go to Milwaukee, at least on paper, it's not the worst place you can go when you're paired up with a superstar. For whatever reason, it hasn't worked between the two. A lot of it is obviously coaching, but I don't think you regret at least asking to leave Portland.
Yeah, he was forced to, he didn't want to leave Portland, right? So there's more noise from the outside saying, I can't believe Dame won't leave. I can't believe he won't ask for a trade. I can't, whatever, than it was coming from him. Like the media has a way of when you leave to join the team, they criticize you, or you're joining up, you're trying to team up. And then when you're there long enough, oh, you should leave and you go join up with somebody. Like they kind of want it both ways. So then eventually he gave in. He said, calm down and said, okay, let me leave. But I want to go to Miami. And he didn't get his choice. He went to the opposite of Miami. In terms of culture, weather, nightlife, the whole thing, he went to Milwaukee. And he still said, okay, fine. Begrudgingly, I'll go there because they got Giannis there. They got a star. We could potentially do something. He's going through a divorce first year. He's not living with his kids anymore. So there's a lot of different things that's going on with him that didn't bring the best version of Damian Lillard out. But this year, I don't know. I'm sure, like I saw interviews that he took boxing up or I think it was martial arts or something in the summer, lost a lot of weight, got in shape. So he came into this season with high expectations, excited, ready to go. So right now, is he regretting it? I don't think he's probably wishing he was still in Portland. You know what I mean? Like maybe Miami, but I'm sure he's not wishing he was still in Portland. So he's probably in a situation where he's like, this is where I'm at right now. We got to figure this out here in Milwaukee. I think that's what he's thinking.
All right. So I think that we had a good discussion on that. In terms of like the rest of the league, there's other stories that we can monitor. I mean, going forward for future episodes, obviously the reigning champion Boston Celtics are still on fire. Jason Tatum looks like he's gunning for the MVP. We never talked about OKC. They're looking great. So there are other storylines. Jokic in Denver as well has been playing great, even though Denver's been struggling a little bit. So there's more things that we could discuss that we'll get to in future episodes. But I think for now, this was a good second episode. I was Vince. That's Abby. That's Emmanuel. That's Justin. Thanks for listening, and catch you on the next one.
Thanks for listening to the Boomshaka podcast. We hope you enjoyed the episode. For Spotify listeners, please remember to subscribe and give us a review. If you're watching on YouTube, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. You can also find us on Twitter at the Boomshaka Pod. Thanks again for listening. Stay tuned for our next episode.